Interesting. Fog. Hey there. Welcome to the veritable edge of Western civilization. Yet again, there's fog at the beach. I can show you some. See that guy? Whoops. You see that guy right there? Whoops. I'm squishing him. I'm squishing him. He's being squished. Just, you know, enjoying myself. So today is Monday, Moon Day, new moon, solstice, December 22nd, 2014. And feeling a little bouncy. Okay, I admit it. There's a little bouncy going on. So really wonderful and productive weekend. And got some really important news to share. I'm having my baby. No, just kidding. Of sorts. I'm going to be releasing a movie this week, hopefully, this week or next week. But I'm going to tell you about it. I've been keeping the discipline on the thing, and something's telling me that it's time to let people know what's going on. Because I'm going to need your help to promote it. But before we get into that, let's start painting, shall we? Hi there. Beautiful pigeon. How's it going? Really? Yeah? Okay. So, what else? Yeah. Here's the painting as it is right now. A little more like that. And it's a pretty exciting piece. I'm really enjoying this. As it seems, there are people walking by. Got the new paint. Digging that. So, saving it. Is that good? Right up here. Maybe a little closer. I don't know if I step forward into somebody there. Yeah, we'll leave it like it is. Alrighty. What's going on this week? Christmas week. It always feels like there's so much that's going on, and then there's, you know, what do I share? Yeah, I had a meeting on Friday night with this collector that's interested in helping Conscious Pilots artist group that Brian and I are, getting the work into we're working on the next exhibition, and there's a couple of other people that have expressed an interest in helping out with that. And then yeah, I'm right across from the corporate Satan here. So I'm watching to see if their sound is bleeding through, because we know what happens when their sound bleeds through. They're playing, you know, corporate music, and it can cause problems with YouTube. So, been a little concerned about it all day, but this is a good spot. There was a little wind earlier, and this is one of the least windy places on the boardwalk. But since I started doing the show last May, I've been, this is show number 131, by the way. Kids doing a somersault. Dad, look.
You hurt your back, right?
He did it before, and then he wanted to show you. He did it before, and then he wanted to show you. So, classic case. He did it before. I saw him do it, do the somersault and stand in his hands and all that sort of stuff. And he went to show his head, and he fell on his head. It's like, don't fall on your head. Come on, let's go. So much a metaphor for life. Good thing is never to miss anything. So we're good. That was his core, and then his mother, his stepmother and dad, John and Mary. That was the core of folks that were, hanging out with Kelly through that stage of his preparing to leave the world. And he'd never been in the hospice before up to that point. But I landed, I think it was probably around the 10th of December and in Colorado, and the next day I got there that night, and the very next day he got moved to a hospice place, and we spent the next week and a half in that hospice place. I think it was a week and a half, might have been a little longer. And finally, he got kicked out of there because he wasn't dying, and that was great. But that's where I was this time last year. We were in the process of getting him to a point where he could get kicked out of there. So, just before Kelly was diagnosed on October 7th, he had gone out to dinner with a friend to a restaurant, and during the meal, his face started to droop. It was October 2013, October 7th. And his date basically just took him straight to the hospital. You know, this is a person that was able up to that point to walk on his hands, you know, just at the drop of a hat. Hey, Kelly, walk on your hands. He just up on his hands and walking around, stand on one hand and whatnot, you know. So it was a pretty big deal. Anyway, they got to the hospital and they discovered that he did an MRI and they discovered that he had two tumors, one on his pituitary gland and one on his brainstem. And, you know, some kind of cancer that is like glioblastoma or something. Some name somebody made up somewhere. And it's a pretty aggressive, it was stage 4. And it was, they gave him, you know, if he was lucky, they gave him like 6 months to a year to live. And so the very next day, I get a call from a mutual friend. And I called them right away. And Kelly was in the hospital and they're in Boulder. And we got on the phone and you know, it's obviously one of the strangest phone calls you ever have with somebody. Like, hey dude, you're fucked up, you know, and this might be the last time I hear from you. Thought we'd have the rest of our lives together, but yeah, it was crazy. Sorry for cussing, but it's just so surreal. So I asked him right away. I was like, "So what's happening with your movie?" Because, you know, he made this documentary called "The Return of the Magi" back in and published it in 2008, and it has hello. It has a combination of all these really famous and emerging astrologers that he had interviewed over the course of 2 years at different astrological conferences. And he was actually going for what's that?
Nice.
Thank you. He was going for what the bleep do we know treatment of astrology. So basically, there's a combination of he interviewed about 20 astrologers at all these conferences, and he was intermixing that with a storyline, a dramatic storyline footage, about 40 minutes of that dramatic footage, and the rest was all straight documentary, you know. And when I saw it in 2008, he came here right as he had just finished it and was releasing the movie. He was on his way to a conference to do the premiere of the movie, and he showed it to me, and I just was like, dude, you know, you need to, you know, if you take out all that dramatic stuff and leave. If you take out all the dramatic stuff, you got a really great movie because the documentary footage is just really powerful, you know. And I like long movies, but this was way too long, and the dramatic stuff really was not very good. And so, you know, I told him right then, I was like, you know, if you want me to do it, because I knew he was burned out. You know, you get to the point on a project like this where you can't look at another minute of it, you know. And I just said, let me do it. I'll just cut it. I'll cut it for you, you know. But he was like, you know, it got backburned basically over the years. And so the day, fast forward to the day that we're on the phone, and you know, he's sitting in the, because they basically were scheduling an emergency operation for the next day. So he went out to dinner on Saturday night. We were talking on the phone on Sunday, and he was expected to go into the surgery on Monday. And as it turned out, it wasn't until the 10th that they did the operation. And when they did the operation, they were only able to operate on one of them, because if they had operated on the brainstem, he could have been paralyzed. And so they operated on the pituitary gland, and removed about 70% of the tumor there. And to make a long story short, by the time I visited him on November 1st, the tumor had grown back. So it was time for them to start doing alternative therapy, trying alternative therapies at that point. So when I went to visit him on November 1st of last year, we spent the whole day together, and we talked about the movie. And what we talked about was, you know, I agreed to do the edit. You know, honestly, to tell you the truth, it's like this. As a Virgo, you know, everybody knows Virgos, and Virgos are kind of particular, right? And so editing this movie was very much like, you know, if a friend of yours has eaten spinach and they got some spinach on one of their teeth, right? And or seaweed, they've eaten seaweed, you know, and they got some, or you know, and so it's like when you tell them where it is, you point to it and everything like that, and you tell them what the problem is, and they try to get it, and it's not going. No matter what they do, it's not going anywhere. And they finally, as a friend, they let you put your finger in their mouth and get the friggin' spinach off their tooth. That's exactly what this is like. And as a Virgo, it's just so gratifying, you know, to get it right, you know, to get that little spinach out of the tooth, when you know that they're wonderful, they're beautiful, and everything like that. So if you just get that spinach out of there, everything's going to be just copacetic, right? So anyway, what ended up happening is Kelly, I went to visit him on November 1st. I flew out of the on Halloween evening. I flew out of LAX, out of the same terminal that 12 hours later, there was, you know, some nutcase went through the same TSA station and shot somebody and killed him. And the next morning, I was on my way to, you know, to spend the day. And the news, and I see this. I'm like, I was just there. I was just midnight last night, you know. And so I spent the day with Kelly, and we talked about the movie. And the situation was that he'd not only done this movie and released it, but he also shot another 40 hours of material for a sequel. And he hadn't touched it in 5 years because he's, you know, he got ADD, man, no doubt about it. And he had so many ideas coming through, and he obviously couldn't manifest them all in one lifetime. So so it got back-burnered. And so the 40 hours of material was just sitting there on a couple of hard drives, and for the sequel. So what we talked about was we agreed that my re-edit of his documentary, I was going to edit it down to about 90 minutes long and cut out all that dramatic stuff. And we would release that as the Return of the Magi remix. And then he told me about the sequel. We agreed on the title of the sequel would be The Wisdom of the Magi. And the idea was twofold. One was to release the remix as a fundraiser for his son Arion Brazenwood, who's named after the main character in his astro fantasy novel, Brazenwood, that he published in the early 90s, which was the first of a series of 12 that was supposed to be written and published. And it turns out it's the only one of the 12 that ever got written and published. But anyway, the story came to him when he was 14 years old, and he was what, I don't know, in his 20s when Arion was born, late 20s. And so anyway, the idea was to release the remix as a fundraiser for his son, for his son's college fund and life fund, Kelly wasn't going to be around possibly at that time, he thought. And he wanted to leave this, whatever he could, to his son, for his son to use. And the funny thing is about Kelly, Kelly's the master astrologer. His son was born, I think, with 6 planets in Capricorn. And one of the things he said is, you give that boy some money, give that boy a nickel, he's going to know what to do with it, you know what I mean? And the idea was to just get him a chunk of change, and he would, make it into a nest egg for the rest of his life. And so releasing the remix as a fundraiser for his son, that was the main focus. And then additionally, the idea was to promote or introduce the idea of the sequel, right? And the idea behind that was to do, we discussed the sequel, what the format of the sequel would be, and that it would be called The Wisdom of the Magi, and there'd be a website, Wisdom of the Magi, and that those 40 hours of interviews would be posted on the website as an archive. Because once again, he'd interviewed some of the the premier astrologers of the day, and he had asked them a specific series of questions, all the same questions, on how do you perceive, and what's your interpretation of this planet, what's your interpretation of that planet, what's your so the idea was that archive would be a treasure trove of information on basic chart interpretation. And hey there. And so the idea was to do a documentary. The sequel would be kind of a commercial for that archive. And once again, there'd be a donation bin for the money to go to Arion on the website. So he gave me at that time, he just gave me a copy of the DVD of his first movie. I had one somewhere, but it's buried somewhere, so I didn't. It's a good thing he gave me a copy. And I knew that I could just work off of that. So to make a long story short, I went back. Eventually, after I made my way back here, after going to Florida and New York for some other missions of dealing with people's mortality. And so by about um, November 15th, I arrived back here in LA and started editing the movie at night. When I'd work here in the daytime, and then at night I would edit the movie. And after 3 weeks, I had it done, a rough cut of it done. 90 minutes. It was exactly 90 minutes, and cut out all the did what we talked about. Cut out all the dramatic stuff and rearrange things. And it was honestly, it was a very challenging project in that I knew this was his baby, and I didn't want to mess with his baby. But there were certain things that I knew what the message was, because we talked about doing this project like years before even he got around to doing it. So I knew what the goal was. But there were times when I could see that things had to be moved around. Certain things that I knew that he was really attached to, they needed to be cut out. And so it was dealing with trying to honor this person's legacy while he's still alive at the same time, and get and be true to the message that where somebody can watch this and not even know Kelly's story or anything and still stand on its own, and so that was kind of the mission. And after 3 weeks, I had a rough cut, and by weird, strange coincidence, I had somebody donate this computer finally while I was in the process of doing it. I didn't have the software to do it justice, but Kelly had he had the right software and everything. He had a product key for it, but it was in Colorado, and that was for editing the sequel, because that would take a lot longer than 3 weeks to do, because that's I got to watch 40 hours worth of stuff and then start editing it. Take the best of each one of those interviews and make it into little sound bites and make it a 90-minute feature. So we'll see what happens. But the deal is that as that rough cut was, as I was burning, literally coming, it takes about 8 hours to burn the first DVD. And so the computer, I'd set it up in the morning, come out here, worked, left it at the internet cafe all day long, rendering and burning the DVD, and got there at night just as it was winding up, and it's got maybe 15 minutes to go, and I got the call from his mother that I needed to come. She wanted me to come out because she didn't think that Kelly was going to make it much longer. So I agreed to come, and I didn't have a penny at the time, but some good friends came through, and somebody picked me up at the airport, and Tina Walker picked me up at the airport, put me up at her place, and the next day, I went over there, and that's when they decided that he wasn't doing too well. We went into hospice and everything like that. Well, while we were in hospice, I showed him the rough cut, and the reason why I did it so fast was because there's a fundraiser that was going to be put on by Chris Brennan, the head of the astrological circle that happens in Boulder, and in like the next week or so. And after I got there, it was scheduled to come up, and there was a possibility of screening it at that fundraiser in Boulder. And it turned out that that's not what happened. But by when I got there, the focus wasn't on all the stuff. It was really on taking care of Kelly. And but when he plateaued and he started to recover a little bit, we got to one night he was cogent enough, and I played it for him. Hi there, how you doing? So, make a long story short, Long story short, I left on Christmas Eve last year, and he was out of hospice, and we went to back to Victor's house, and we had Christmas there and whatnot. And then I came. No, we had Ariane's birthday. That's right, Ariane's birthday, because he was born on the solstice, I think. And and then on Christmas Eve I left and came back here. And then 3 months later, on March 24th, 2014, Kelly passed away. And make a longer story short, shorter. There's more in here too if you want to take a look.
So if I see one that I like,
Yeah.
it might be just like a here. The board would be too heavy for me.
Right. You can just take it like that. These are 15. And these are 10, unless you get more than one in there. 2 for 15, 3 for 20. You're from Australia?
In there.
Yeah.
Like it?
I did. Actually, I was coming from the bush and I needed to recover from an infection, and it was like the perfect place to get like taken care of and everything.
To the Australian bush?
Yeah. Yes. I went there for a rainbow gathering in near Tennerfield back in 2000. And you know that grass called spinifex?
Yeah.
Right. So there's a fungus on that. And if you have an open cut, it can, the fungus can get into your system, and then sugar, it can mess you up. And it went crazy in my system. And just from a regular cut, and then getting the spinifex, crazy. But Melbourne was good to me. Well, Melbourne fixed me up.
Glad to do that.
Yeah. So it's on my yummy list of places.
Yeah, so we're actually going to move when we get home and move up to Queensland.
Really? Whereabouts? The ocean?
Yeah, the ocean.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. It's wonderful. Good for
We're going to
you.
follow the sun.
Excellent. Good move.
So are these prints of your original clay?
Yes.
Very nice.
Thank you. About 5%. Okay, so I'll continue the story tomorrow. Oh, battery. Yeah, Rogers, happy birthday. And we'll obviously paint some more on this and post that on Facebook. And remember, yeah, there we go. We love you.